What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little Middlekauff mailbag at John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. At John Middlekauff. Instagram. DMs wide freaking open. See if I can find those DMs. We'll start with Sean. With the Packers lost to the Eagles, do you think it's time to place LaFleur on the dreaded hot seat? I'm not saying fire him now, but I'm saying that this season we went 1-5 in the division. God, that's not great. We're a block field goal away from being 0-6, as well as 0-6 against the top three teams in the conference. I'd be more okay with it if those losses were a bit closer, but we never came out of the gates and fell down 2 scores in every game to the Bears. I feel like we've been complacent and content with just winning 10-plus games, but the ultimate goal is a Super Bowl. LaFleur has proven he can A- get there and B- get his team to show up for big games. Feels like we're in a similar boat as Pittsburgh with Tomlin, where we're winning, but our ceiling isn't high enough, aka the Super Bowl. Personally, I'd give him another year, 2 max, and see if it changes. I hear what you're saying, and I understand the frustration. I think he's proven, last year you guys won a playoff game on the road. He resurrected Aaron Rodgers' career. I know Jordan Love's been all over the map this year, but he took a quarterback who had never really played beside one game and turned him into a competent starter, a guy that you can make the playoffs with. Honestly, some of his work with Malik Willis was really, really impressive. I think one concerning part for the Packers is like they have 10 sweet wide receivers, but it doesn't feel like any of them just kind of rose above the next, right? Christian Watson, clearly now with a torn ACL, and let's face it, he was underwhelming this year, is the expectations were higher. Jaden Reed, very talented player, but I think the expectations for him were higher than the way it played out. Let me just bring up your guys, because I think their stats. So Green Bay Packers stats. I want the regular season. So Jaden Reed had 55 catches. Tucker Kraft had 50. Dobbs had 46. Wicks had 39. I think you were kind of hoping one of those guys would be like, okay, this guy could be a top 7-8 wide receiver in the NFL. And the season ended and we're still left like, who's the best dude out of them all? And clearly, Reed looked like he hurt his shoulder bad. Obviously, Dobbs with the head injury. He's already wearing the concussion cap. I haven't really been online today, but I would guess, I don't know, maybe LaFleur said this last night, get another concussion. So I just think that you need some of those guys to step up. And defensively, you guys actually felt like you were better this year than in years past. He's got a couple more years, man. The division thing would be a little concerning. To go 1-5, and like you said, easily could have lost the one Bears game. To go 0-6, like that's a problem. And to lose the Eagles twice. So basically, if you take and you said it, the Lions, Vikings, and Eagles, the 3 best teams in the NFC record-wise, you're 0-6 against. And then to lose to the Bears, when, let's face it, you're trying to win. Question for the bag. McCarthy out as Dallas coach. Should the Cowboys trade for Mike Tomlin? He needs a fresh start, and the Cowboys definitely need his toughness. If you look at recent memory, I guess they had Wade Phillips. I'm trying to think if there was like a consistent theme. But they had Parcells, Wade Phillips, defensive guys, Jason Garrett, McCarthy, offensive guys. I don't know if Jerry has necessarily a consistent theme. Campo was a defensive guy. But, yeah, We have to see their options. It's there are going to be some stories coming out, I would imagine, the next couple days, the way this plays out. But also, are the Cowboys in a position to trade for Mike Tomlin? To me, if you're going to get Mike Tomlin, you might as well just keep Mike McCarthy. So Albert Breer said they're basically the same guy. One just coaches offense and one just coaches defense. To me, and I talked about this earlier on the podcast portion, on the video portion, I did it on the reaction video to Monday Night Football. But you're paying Dak Prescott all this money. You're going to hire an offensive coach. Like you're not going to go like firing Mike McCarthy when Dak and the quarterback is kind of his baby. I have a hard time thinking they're going to go defense. Honestly, can't see it, and I don't think it makes much sense. And we'll see. I beside just the initial reaction and the Jerry Jones statement thrown out there, I would imagine we'll learn a lot more over the next 24, 48 hours about the details of what exactly happened. Like, why didn't this happen last week? Don't quite understand that. Chargers fans still recovering. I would imagine we move on from Bosa and Mack is retiring, it seems. Khalil Mack's retiring? Didn't he just have I thought Khalil Mack was fantastic this season. Maybe I'm just out of the loop. I'd be a little surprised if he retired. I mean, Khalil Mack, it feels like, could still garner, even if they were to tell him they don't want him. I don't know why they wouldn't. I would think that the Chargers would want Khalil Mack. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl level guy this year and like legitimately earned it. He I felt like he had more than six sacks. Played in 16 games. Six sacks. This doesn't feel right. I thought he had more than that. Maybe he did. I don't know. Maybe I thought his season was better. Never mind. I thought he was pretty good, but I guess the sack total wasn't as high. Uh Everybody wants to talk about how we are going to trade sign a big time wide receiver, but to me, Harbaugh doesn't really do that. What about acquiring Miles Garrett? You think that's in play? The discourse on Herbert is infuriating. People so quick to forget how well he played against Denver, that we needed him to clinch a spot, or versus Las Vegas last week, and it was the difference of the 5 and the 7 seed. Uh, O line couldn't stop a nosebleed. Offense as a whole was horrendous. This is not all on Herbert. I don't know that Greg Roman is the right guy. Some of his play calling baffled me. J.K. just carried the ball 9 times. There's a reason he was out of a job for a while. The Harbaughs are very loyal to Greg Roman. I mean, he's worked for Jim, then he worked for John, and now he's working for Jim again. They freaking love the guy. I don't know him personally. Seems like a nice guy, but he does. I would say he's not known as the greatest pass game guy. As a run game coordinator, he's good at that. But when it comes to scheming the pass, I don't think Greg Roman's the first guy you think about. No one's confusing him with O'Connell, McVay, or Andy Reid. But Jim Harbaugh loves him. I'm here, yeah, on the discourse with Herbert. The thing with Miles Garrett is you'd have to trade a lot, and I have a hard time seeing them trade a lot for an older guy, even if that player is big time. I feel like the Packers or a team like that is more likely to make that move than, or even I've seen the Arizona Cardinals, like some desperate teams. The Chargers, they were ahead of schedule this year. So I'd be stunned that's if Miles Garrett and the Chargers forgiven. I mean, this is a guy that could easily put. I know he's older and he needs a contract extension, but 2 1s at his age would be pretty bold. But I think he would definitely garner a 1 and 2 2s. I mean, he's still an elite player. It's just his age, and you have to give him another $100+ million. Been an avid fan for a long time. I'm reaching out because I listened to your podcast last night with Colin. I appreciated your in-depth conversation about California versus other places. We've long entertained heading to the Phoenix area ourselves. How has the transition be or been? Are you enjoying it? Any other insights you can share? I know you're busy. Probably get a million of these. I don't even know if this was a mailbag question necessarily. Maybe you just wanted a personal response. I learned a long time ago I've lived in Philadelphia, I've lived in Kansas City, I've lived in Fresno, the Bay Area. You kind of do what you do once you become an adult, right? My life for the last 20 years has really Monday through Friday, Monday through Sunday, if you work weekends, revolves around work, food, gym. Like that's a pretty consistent theme of mine on most work days where I just tend to work a lot. So whether I lived in Alaska or I lived in Dallas or Arizona or California, like I do the same things. I'm a pretty big creature of habit. So to me, it was just about being in a place that I wanted to be because my life today is not any different than it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago when I was living in the Bay Area in terms of my routine. I do think bang for my buck and from a tax perspective, it was a gigantic game changer coming from California to Arizona. And I don't just mean on your income taxes. I had a condo in California, for example, I paid like 500 grand for it, which most places in the country, if you don't live in California and looked at the condo I owned for the price I paid for it, you would think I was on drugs. And it was just, I mean, it was going rate. If you wanted to live for that area, you had no choice. But my property taxes, because in that area, I pay more property taxes for that condo than I do for a house that's worth, I don't know, uh, well over double of what the condo was worth. So you just save money in so many different places, which as I'm starting a family, it matters. So I factored all that in. And to me, there's an element of one thing about I don't live in Phoenix. I live in North Scottsdale, and it was an area when I first started coming here more consistently, like 4 or 5 years ago, I fell in love with, and I like golf. And the other thing is like I grew up in the heat, where I grew up in Davis, which is basically 10 minutes away from Sac. Unlike the Bay Area, which can be very cold, and even during the summer, it doesn't get that hot. Where I grew up, it was 105 to 108 degrees for a couple months a year. So I was used to the heat, and then I lived in Fresno for a long time. Like I like the heat. So if you don't like the heat here, it can be a problem. I mean, for a couple months stretch, it is really, really hot. But in terms of cleanliness, in terms of things are new, like the one thing with the Bay Area, everything was old. It's like you're paying an ultra premium for just old and shitty. And it's like, why? And I come here and everything's new, everything's clean. Uh, I love this area. I've loved it for years. It's exceeded my expectations. Obviously, I'm getting married here, so she's been a huge part of it. But overall, I would say this: your life doesn't change that much place to place once you get to be of a certain age. And who knows, maybe you're older than me. I think you would agree. It's just about what are the benefits of leaving. Whether you have young children, the schools are better. Obviously, the pay's better in terms of what you get to take home, the bang for your buck of what you get for what you pay for in terms of a home. The other thing is, I just looked at it simply like if these were stocks, I love the stock market. I would short where I was coming from. I'm like, this is not sustainable. This is not going to keep working out. They're at a breaking point. And I looked at Vegas and I looked at Arizona, Scottsdale. I'm like, I would invest heavily if these were publicly traded companies. And obviously, Vegas and Scottsdale are booming. And mainly because so many people from California are moving to those areas. And so you look in 20, 30 years, you buy now what it's going to become. I don't even, I mean, I would die on this hill. I feel pretty confident of where things are going. And mainly, like companies are going to more and more are going to start here. Forever that was a huge point of difference for the Bay Area. Silicon Valley, companies started there. Like I wouldn't bet on that happening for the next 30 years. Not saying it won't happen on an individual basis, but at the rate in which it was happening. So I was like, I'm out. And it's probably the best thing I've ever done. NFL playoffs. We're talking about the NFL playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key, to winning in the NFL playoffs. And the key to you scoring big is betting on them at DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it in the playoffs. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big during the NFL playoffs with the DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. First off, for the mailbag. Big Eagles fan. I often find myself conflicted watching Jalen. I know he does not have the arm talent of the top 5 guys, but I can't help but wonder, while watching him this year, that he is being told or coached to be overly conservative with the ball, and that is making him look even worse. Clearly, everyone in the building knows that if he doesn't turn the ball over, they almost always win, and he just seems to be playing to that at times. It just makes it look so much meh as a passer. I think if he let it rip a bit, he may have a few more picks, but he may look more like 2022 Jalen. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to what he's being told on a weekly basis about how to play, but I do think it was pretty clear as this season went on that he is less likely to just sling that pill around, unless it's pretty obvious. And I would say, yeah, maybe he's being told that, but you would think that A.J. Brown knows that, and it doesn't feel like he likes the vibe of this whole thing. I think as a whole, Jalen has always struggled for the guys that make a lot of money to pull the trigger, definitely within the pocket. He will scramble to throw, but, when he sits in the pocket, that's not really, listen, he's a better player than Tua, but just in terms of snap, get the ball out, Tua is getting rid of that football. Jalen's kind of the opposite. I just think he's a bizarre player. I think that's part of it. He's a bizarre player. Because I heard someone say, well, he wins a lot. And I think I saw the stats of some of his NFC playoff wins against the Giants recently, against the 49ers, and obviously the game yesterday. It's not like he's thrown for many yards. So part of that is he benefits from being on a really good team. And we've seen him in a big moment against the Chiefs throw for a lot of yards, but it almost feels like that game was more of an outlier. He's a great runner. Great runner would be strong. He's a really, really good runner. He's a unique runner. He has a very instinctive running style, and he's a good playmaker outside the pocket. But if you can keep him within the pocket, like you watched Jaden Daniels last night, Jaden will sit in that pocket and throw a strike over the middle of the field. He's a little taller. Maybe it's easier for him to see, but yeah, I don't know. I think Jalen has always been a pretty head-scratching player. I think that's part of it. He's because he's better than so many guys, but you watch him and you're like, how good is he? And he's clearly not in the same universe as the elite guys. But you can win a lot of games with him because Howie's such a good GM and they have such a loaded roster. I'd have a hard time just saying, though, it's strictly because the coaches are telling him not to throw the ball. I mean, they're paying their 2 wide receivers a boatload of money. I think and trust me, the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie, they like throwing the football. Like you said, it might be time for Tomlin and the Steelers to part ways. How would you feel about a trade or if he was hired by the Cowboys? I don't think it's entirely on Tomlin. I think it's more of an offensive talent issue that the Cowboys don't have that much of an issue with that. When the Cowboys are good, or at least in the playoffs, that's good for the NFL, and I feel like their fans would be in the position that the Steelers are in every year. The Cowboys already have really good defensive pieces. Tomlin would have to just change the culture. P.S. Even after the shit show, my take is Love takes the number 5 spot in the top 5 quarterbacks. His peak is insane, and he actually won a playoff game. Maybe this is before the game yesterday. I'm not sure what that PS was about. My thing with, we talked about it earlier, is just the Dak Prescott paying him a lot of money. And you would think you'd want your head coach to be involved in that scenario. I mean, part of Mike Tomlin, the number one question is like, who's the OC? Who's the guy calling the plays? Like at least you knew when it was Jason Garrett, Kellen Moore, McCarthy. I mean, these are all offensive guys. And part of the problem with Tomlin is like, what's going on with this defense? Why does it look so atrocious? Think about this: the Cowboys down the stretch, as they got guys back, I felt like their defense, for the most part, looked better than the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch. Love the podcast. It's the only break I get from studying from my board exams. Also love the new guy, Intern Jackson, baby. Great addition to the pod. How was Burrow not an all-pro? He was clearly the best quarterback in the league. Plus, he was better than Josh Allen in every category. I'm kind of in agreement with Colin on this. I don't get that caught up. All pros, Pro Bowls, MVPs. I simply don't give a shit. And in a weird way, like Joe Burrow makes $55 million dollars a year, $50 million dollars a year. He just threw 45 touchdowns or whatever. Clearly wasn't his fault. His team didn't make the playoffs. The defense screwed him early in the season. Like, does it even matter? Like, Joe Burrow is on a path to the Hall of Fame. Whether he was an all-pro this year or not, I do think it's difficult to make him an all-pro when the other two guys, like, the Bills are very, very Josh Allen reliant. Like, if his stats weren't as good as Burrow's, but you take him off and you put an average quarterback, they win like 3 games. Same thing with the Bengals. So it's like no difference, his importance. And his team was the 2 seed in the AFC. What are you going to do? Not put Lamar on there? So I think it was more of a product of those two guys. Their teams had really good seasons, and they're clearly their team's best player. I'm currently a junior in college studying accounting, but I love hearing you and Colin talk about the front office side of the NFL. I would love to get an internship. I can't even speak today. An internship. I've been talking a lot. Obviously, I mean, podcasting, but I just feel like in general. Do you have any advice for who to contact? I would say one advice I have in this modern world we live in: go to LinkedIn and find people that work for teams. I mean, you're young, you should understand how to, use that, how to search by specific teams, and then search for people in their business development office, and then connect with them and shoot them DMs. The message service. When I was in college, none of this shit existed. There were no such thing as direct messages. There was no such thing as LinkedIn. I had to send handwritten letters to these teams and keep my fingers crossed someone responded. That was the only way I could get involved. And you have so many avenues now and some of them might not see it, some of them might not respond. But if you LinkedIn connect with 50 people in the NFL on different teams, I'm talking total, and shoot them all a message, a couple of them will respond. That's what I would do. LaFleur for Tomlin. Who says no? The Packers. I would not trade LaFleur for Tomlin straight up. No chance. 2025. Question: do you think Lamar or Josh could be top 10 running backs in the league if they couldn't throw? I mean, Josh Allen's 6'5", so I would say based on his size, 6'5", 240. If he was just in the backfield like Derrick Henry, would he look the same as being a quarterback? I don't think he would. I do think Lamar, I don't know if he'd necessarily be a running back. I think he could be like a hybrid player, assuming he could catch, and he could definitely be a star offensive player. Give him some end arounds if he could run in the slot. I think Josh would probably have to play tight end, but again, I would have to assume both those guys could catch. Lamar's style is more natural as a runner. To me, part of Josh, and I would put Mahomes under this as well, Herbert too. Obviously, Mahomes is the worst runner of that group. Is when you're a quarterback and you're dropping back to pass, and then I decide to run, there's an element of that version of my running ability where half the guys are defending against the pass. That when I play the run, it's not apples to apples. Like Lamar, they do so much in the run game where it's truly a run look. Obviously, Josh does some as well. but I clearly both are high end NFL athletes. I think Josh could be. I mean, why couldn't he be like a slot tight end and Lamar kind of be the skinnier version of like Debo Samuel? I'm an avid listener. I was wondering how you got into scouting. I currently play Division III football and am interested in working in the football space. I was wondering if it's more about connections. I get this question a lot. You're already playing college football. I think the number one thing you should do is try to get involved in college football. So you're in D3. How do you parlay that into a graduate assistant job for Division One program? And now with these NFL or these programs running like NFL style personnel departments, you can work in the scouting department for a college and be in the recruiting world. That's how I got my start. I started working in recruiting at Fresno State. Hell, I did it at Cal Poly when I was an undergrad. But that's what you should try to do. And all these programs, Power Four and even non-Power Four, are going to have these positions. So that's the I would say route I would take. My question is about JJ McCarthy. Everyone this year is talking him up and how he is better than anyone in this upcoming draft, which probably is true. I don't know if they're saying he's better than anyone. They're just saying he was a better prospect coming out of college. But he was the fifth quarterback taken last year, and I could have sworn the concern was he wasn't asked to do much at Michigan, which was why Minnesota taking him was the ideal spot because they could develop him into a younger Cousins. So with only bad teams looking for quarterbacks, will a trade for him actually work out? I just don't think he's getting traded. What's the incentive for the Minnesota Vikings to trade him? I'm recording this part before the game, but regardless of what happens tonight, I just don't think he's a tradable player if you're them, unless you're going to give me a top 15 pick. And I have a hard time seeing anyone giving them a top 15 pick for JJ McCarthy, who's already been injured and already wasted a year of his rookie contract and couldn't practice all year. So his value from when they drafted him to sitting here today is diminished. I think they put him on the trading block. I do not think they get a first round pick for him. Got a question. Lifelong Steeler fan. Despite knowing how the wild card game would go, I still found myself disappointed and frustrated. It's the way life is. Sometimes we know the outcome of a situation, and still, once it happens, we find ourselves being angry or bitter at the situation, even though we knew going into it what the outcome would be. At this point, I want to see Tomlin either fired or, best case scenario, traded. At this point, it's clear we're unable to compete with the big dogs of the AFC. Do you think it's time to blow everything up from scratch, trading away pieces like Minka, TJ, etc., for better positioning in the draft so we can secure a young franchise quarterback? My pushback to that would be because if you just had a fire sale, you would be able to get a lot of ammunition for all these guys, including Tomlin. But from a player standpoint, who in college right now do you think is some lock superstar quarterback? I'm not even talking about this draft with Cam and Dion and Shador, but who do I see next year? Like Carson Beck? I'm still baffled by Miami, who is a much worse football program than Georgia, whose defense is atrocious. Giving Cam Ward $3 or $4 million when he has a surgically repaired, and not necessarily repaired, they literally just did the surgery, and he has like a Barry Bonds level thing on his elbow, on his throwing arm, exactly what Brock Purdy had. Well, Brock Purdy couldn't really do anything up until training camp, and even then, they had to be very careful with him during training camp. So Carson Beck's going to get no offseason and then come back and you're paying him $3 or $4 million. He's not a better player than Cam Ward, and Cam Ward carried you to 10 wins. Like I think there's a chance they win like 7 or 8 games with Carson Beck. But he's returning. Let's say Quinn Ewers returns. We have no clue if Arch Manning's any good. Raiola was terrible last year, and he's not even draft eligible. So you just think you look around the country like, who are these can't miss high-end quarterbacks. Some will surely, the cream will rise and we'll get a couple guys that excel. But as we sit here tonight and today and going into the offseason, even come the combine and free agency and the draft, you could not feel great about the next couple years because there is a great unknown. There's no one in college with the hype of Caleb Williams or even back to like Baker Mayfield. They're just, I think there's just a lot of question marks with a lot of different guys. Big fan of the pod. Listen to multiple times per week. Big Niner homer. That being said, how on earth can anyone justify paying Herbert 55 per year after this and question Brock getting his? Herbert is 0-2 in the postseason and incredibly bad. Brock is 4-1 with very solid performances, including a Super Bowl appearance. Herbert finally got the right coach and talent around him. The contract is unacceptable. Can't believe there is not big question marks around this. I think a lot of people question how good Justin Herbert is. I think a lot of people do. But he played on an offense this year where his best two players was a rookie, Ladd McConkey, and J.K. Dobbins. So when you look at Justin Herbert this year, he threw three interceptions, 23 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions. Let's see, down the stretch, he threw 2 picks against the Lions, 1 against the Dolphins, 1 against the Rams, all in must-win spots. He was atrocious. So yeah, like what you did a couple of years ago, awesome. I could talk to you all day about the success I had in 2013 or 17 or 20. Who cares? It's 2025. So next year, who would you rather have? Justin Herbert or Brock Purdy? Every human being I know would take Justin Herbert over Brock Purdy. I'm pretty confident that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch would as well. Being said, Brock Purdy's had success. He played on an absolutely loaded team. Jalen Hurts just won a playoff game yesterday. He didn't have to do shit. He didn't have to do anything. Like, think about this. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels all won playoff games. Did Jalen Hurts have to do the same as the other 3 guys? Not even close. So when we just say playoff wins, obviously they matter, but we have to put it into context. And listen, Brock's made some big-time plays in playoff games, but he's also done some questionable stuff as well. And I don't like paying anyone $55 million if their name's not Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes. But if you want to pay Brock Purdy $55 million and think you can build a team and he can carry you, like that's just not going to happen. Can you win games with Brock Purdy when his team's good? Yes. Can you build the team when his team's not good? I don't know. Or can you build the team around him when his team's average? That's why I said going into this offseason, like they're going to pay him. I don't know what the number's going to be, but he's going to get money this offseason. Okay. You better hit on these first-round picks. I guess you only have 1 first-round pick. You better hit on pick 11 and pick 43. Because I know you hit on the late-round picks. You do it all the time. Can you go get your Micah Parsons or your Tristan Wirfs? Because you got pick 11. That better be a fucking home run. And pick 43 better be an immediate starter. If it's not, they're going to have problems. Because we saw Brock Purdy when it kind of got tough and it's like, well, all these guys were injured. Well, yeah, just will be to a victory. I want to hop on your back and you carry me. You cannot throw a pick in the second half of a tight game with the season on the line. And he constantly did. And it made me concerned. I can handle losing, but it's like, why'd we lose? Well, Brock threw devastating interceptions. Game after game after game. I can live with an interception or an awful performance in one game. Does it happen a lot? And that's what it felt like it was happening with Brock Purdy. Lions game, shootout. We cannot turn the ball over. Jared Goff could not afford to turn the ball over. Brock turns it over twice. Stares down safeties. I like the guy. I'm not anti-Brock Purdy. I like him about $35 million. Well, what about his comp? What about this? I don't care. He's not talented enough for me ever to have him put me on his back. He's not as talented as Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has a better arm and every bit this good of a runner. Like Baker Mayfield, like can give me 40 touchdowns. Is Brock Purdy ever going to be a 40 touchdown thrower? Too many times this year in big spots, like his average arm strength came into play. But yeah, I mean, they'll probably give him a ton of money. And then the pressure on him is going to be immense. Because I can't have a year where, what were his final stats this year? Like 18 and 12. He was 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. And he was 65%. That's the other thing. Like with Brock Purdy's skill set, I need like 70%. I need a much higher completion percentage because I'm never going to get a 40 touchdown season. So if you're going to be like 25 touchdowns and 10 picks, can I get like 71% completion percentage? That's part of what made Drew Brees so awesome. He was so accurate. Sometimes Brock's not that accurate, and sometimes he is. But it's just, you never know what's going to come. As a Texans fan, currently watching us beat the Chargers, Slowick clearly has an awful feel for the game. Despite winning, thanks to CJ's improvisation, the defense and special teams unit, the play calling is poor. What makes winning teams choose to make a coaching change? How often does this happen? Do you think Houston will make an offensive coordinator change this spring? Crazy thing is, they look so bad in that game until that final drive. And honestly, it was the play where the missed snap with CJ picks it up, scrambles, makes the play, and then he turned into 2023 CJ Stroud. I remember watching him last year though and feeling like Bobby Slowick had a decent feel for like he was a good offensive coordinator. And this year, for whatever reason, it feels clunky. I'm with you. To me, I think there are going to be several reasons that an assistant coach is fired. One could be the owner. Like the owner just goes like, hey, you got to fire this guy. We're firing the coordinator. So you figure out you want to tell him, but he's not coming back. Another could be an assistant coach, or excuse me, the head coach. The other could be the head coach and the assistant coach just don't see eye to eye, which would be a little shocking given that they've been boys now for a while. They've now won multiple playoff games together. So like they've fallen out of favor. Uh, I would say those would basically be the two options. The owner wants them or the head coach wants them gone. Um, yeah, I would say it's just really that simple. But there's not like a checklist. We went from this statistically to this, right? I think you have a pretty good feel. Like, are the players not buying in? Does your quarterback question him? Do you think that him and the quarterback have a diminishing relationship? Do you think that he's getting worse? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's probably been in the history, just the modern history, the last 20 plus years of assistant coaches getting fired. You could probably find an example of literally everything. I just don't like you. The owner wants you gone. My quarterback doesn't like you. We had a blow up, and there's no responding to it. It's one of those situations like a relationship where you get into an argument and some things are said and you can just never take it back. Maybe you don't listen to me, like almost like a malcontent. Like I want you to do X, Y, and Z, and you do A, B, and C. And so football, philosophically, we're not on the same page. I think that happens a lot for sure. I mean, I hear situations of that happening all the time. Like I kept telling you to run the ball more and you passed it, or vice versa. Uh, Maybe you think you have a young up and coming coach who's better, and basically I want to fire you to keep that guy around so he doesn't get an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way I can describe, at least from my knowledge of the stories I've heard over the years of why things happen. Appreciate everyone listening. We will talk to you soon. Adios. Have a great day.